For NewYorkUpstate.com and Syracuse.com, I am Matt Parrino with Ryan Talbot, and we are here to talk Josh Allen. 6 games left. The Buffalo Bills likely out of the playoff race. Not mathematically, I might add, but realistically speaking. And so what's this season going to be about? 6 games. It's going to be about Josh Allen. 7th overall pick in the last draft, the highest in Bills history. And before we get into what's to come, let's look back at what's already happened. 6 games, 5 starts. First of all, Ryan, what's been your overall impressions, assessment of Josh Allen so far through what he's done this season?
Well, it's been a while since we've seen him, but I will say that I think towards the end of his first stint here as starter, we saw some growth from him. We saw him make a few really impressive throws. And actually, the throw that sticks with me is the play that he ended up getting injured on with his elbow. And he kind of lofted a ball over a defensive player right in stride and hitting Kelvin Benjamin. And those are the types of throws that I wanted to see from Josh Allen this year. And he was starting to flash a little bit here and there with those plays. Obviously, the Bills have not been shy about letting him try to throw the deep ball in his first games of action earlier in the year. Now they've added team speed that I think is going to help him here down the stretch. So I want to see if he's more successful in that regard too. But I did like what I was starting to see from him in that first stint where he was starting to make those plays where I said, okay, these were those wow plays that obviously the Bills loved about him when they were scouting him and when they were looking at him in this draft class.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're a Bills fan, you have to be almost, an extra bit of satisfaction in the fact that I don't think any rookie quarterback has really stood out per se. I mean, you could talk about Baker Mayfield and what he's been able to do. Obviously, probably, overall, if you take the entire season's body of work, probably the best rookie quarterback of the bunch. But Josh Allen's right there. I think if you go back to that Minnesota game, what he was able to do in that spot, the throwing numbers aren't necessarily there yet, and that's obvious, and it's not even really up for debate. But to do that on the road against a defense like Minnesota, make plays, move the ball, do what the offense needs you to do, what Brian Daboll set out for you to do. I think that's a big positive, a big plus in Josh Allen's for the season for Josh Allen. So I think that, at this point, going into the next 6 games, you have to be happy with what's happened so far. But looking ahead a little bit, before we get to what we want to see out of Josh Allen, because he is the starter and he is going to be playing, what are your thoughts on should he be playing?
Yeah, I absolutely think he should be playing. You already alluded to it here in your introduction. The Bills have not mathematically been eliminated from the playoffs, but at 3-7, they would need just everything to break their way. And this season is not necessarily about getting to the playoffs. It'd be great, but if it were to ever happen, they would want it to be because of Josh Allen or with Josh Allen in the lineup. This year, it was all about his development. Once they ended up getting him on the field, I don't think they wanted to rush him out there, but obviously if we had to go all the way back, there were some less than ideal circumstances that got him on the field in the first place. So now that he's healthy, you want to say, okay, he has 6 games left. Let's just see, did he actually learn from his time on the sidelines? You heard about how Brian Daboll was pretty much quizzing him on formations and alignments and things that he saw when he was on the sidelines during that stint when he was dealing with the elbow injury. So did he really learn? Can he pick up from where he left off, where he was making those wow plays here and there for the Bills? So that's what I'm looking for going forward.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because I was able to talk to a couple offensive linemen today in the locker room, and we spend so much time talking about what this season's been like for Josh Allen and how that process has played out for him. But it's interesting because these offensive linemen, a group that has been very much maligned throughout this season, has had now 4 different quarterbacks that they've had to make adjustments for. And Deion Dawkins today said, listen, every quarterback that plays, it's a little bit different. My techniques, my footwork is different for every quarterback. You have Matt Barkley, a guy that, is more of a pocket passer, isn't going to get out, and run as much as a guy like Josh Allen. But the one good thing is the bulk of the season has been with Josh Allen, and the future of this team is with Josh Allen. So I think that him coming back energizes this group because there's so much promise for the future. And I think that in a season like this, at 3-7, with the struggles that they've had, I think it is about, like, especially for these young players, Robert Foster, Ray McLeod, Isaiah McKenzie, guys that, potentially could be a part of this thing going forward. It's important to get Josh back into the fold and help him have some success to build on into next season. The rest of the way here, 6 games left. What would be, in your eyes, a successful run of games here for Josh Allen? Is it about wins? Is it about stats? Or is it just about these little moments, like you alluded to, where he's able to make some plays and start building some synergy with his pass catchers?
I'm going to say it's a combination of all three. You really shouldn't judge a quarterback by wins. There's always that quarterback win stat. But if Buffalo's defense is playing well, you're not going to need Josh Allen to go out there and throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. So can he be, I don't even want to use the word game manager, but can he do enough with the offense to help the Bills pull out some wins here late in the year? They have some winnable matchups. Jacksonville, it's a 3-win team. No one probably would have thought that this was a winnable game going into the season, but all of a sudden it is. The Miami Dolphins games, they have 2 games on the horizon there. Those are winnable. The Jets again. And even their game against the Lions here coming up in a few weeks. Those are 5 winnable games. And while, some people are going to say, well, we don't want them winning 5 out of 6 games because that'll really hurt them draft-wise, you do want to at least see them compete. You don't want to see those blowout losses. You don't want to see those games where Josh Allen has a few turnovers early or the offense can't move the ball and the defense is on the field. So, yeah, you want to see some wins. You want to see the stats. Maybe that accuracy percentage go up a little bit. Maybe see him connect more on those deep passes now that they have Deontay Thompson, now that they have Robert Foster back, now that they have Isaiah McKenzie. They added a lot of speed around him. So can he connect on those deep passes? That's something that I want to see over the final 6 games as well. So, of those 3 things that you said, I want to see a little bit of a combination of all 3.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point. And I think as a fan base, I think it's important to get Josh Allen back in the fold here. Listen, Matt Barkley, that's a great performance that he had against the Jets. And it was almost like he brought a calming presence to this offense and almost instilled some belief in a lot of these guys. You take a guy like Robert Foster, who had a really brutal training camp, a guy that, there was question marks around his pass catching ability throughout the preseason, and for him to come out and make plays like that, one thing that has been lacking for me and from Josh Allen throughout the season has been the lack of the long ball accuracy. That was one of the things coming out of school that all of the experts were touting, was his ability to go down the field, make big plays. But it's actually the most success he's had this year has been in that short to intermediate passing game, especially in that Minnesota game. So I think if you can get him some synergy with a guy like Robert Foster, a guy that this organization, this coaching staff believes in, I think that's a big win going forward. Before we get out of here, we're getting into draft coverage here. We've really ramped it up over the last couple weeks. You last week put out a mock draft. We spoke to Joe Parrino from the Draft Network. So we have a lot of draft content over on NewYorkUpstate.com, Syracuse.com. Check that out. But looking ahead into 2019, the draft free agency, what do you think? What would you like to see the Bills do to put some pieces around Josh Allen?
Well, I want them to follow the same, game plan that the Bears did with Mitchell Trubisky. Pretty much, I think their seasons kind of mirror one another, the rookie years, where then in year 2, the Bears went out and they added a lot of talent, a lot of weapons in the passing game, a lot of guys that could kind of, make him look better, and he has looked better in year 2. So in free agency, go out there and get one of the better wide receivers. Tyrell Williams is a name that you seem to continually hear as maybe a best option out there for the Bills. In the draft, there's a lot of wide receivers that I could see going round 1, round 2. I don't know if there's a top 5, top 10 guy there just yet, but there's another option there. Get that offensive line bolstered up a little bit. Jonah Williams was the Bills' pick in my most recent mock draft, and he looks like the most NFL-ready offensive tackle in this year's draft class. You get him in there with Deion Dawkins. You see if Wyatt Teller continues to grow at guard. And all of a sudden you have three really young guys on that line that you can grow around Josh Allen, and maybe bring in another running back because LaShawn McCoy is not getting any younger, because Chris Ivory's not getting any younger, and because Marcus Murphy, he should have some pretty fresh legs based on the amount of use he's had in his career, but he's already 27 years old as well. So get him weapons across the board. That should be the big game plan in the draft, in free agency as well.
Definitely. Totally on board with everything you said. I think the most important position in my mind, because like you said, you can go out and do what the Bears did. Bring in some guys, some talented guys, maybe not top-tier guys at wide receiver, but I think the most important, you look at that interior offensive line and specifically that center position. You lost Eric Wood in the offseason, and that ended up being, I think, obviously Richie Incognito is a big blow losing him, but Eric Wood not being there, you really see what's missing when you don't have that level of play at the center position. And I think they should do it twofold. They should go out and try to get, top center, whether it be the first guy, the second guy, wherever that is in free agency with this money, and draft a guy. I mean, they hit on Eric Wood when they drafted him. I would go back and try to, take a couple shots there, because if you're talking about your franchise quarterback, you want to put a franchise center in front of him, and I think that should be a top priority. I think, you could find receivers. I mean, you look across the board. I mean, even Robert Foster, if he ends up being anything, undrafted guy. I think making sure that they address that interior offensive line, like you said, should be a top priority. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, Ryan Talbot, thank you so much for lending your services, my friend. Always good to chat with you. And for all of your Buffalo Bills content, keep it locked on NewYorkUpstate.com, Syracuse.com. We'll have you covered throughout the final stretch here of the season, the last 6 games, and then into the offseason as the Bills continue to build for 2019 and beyond. Thanks for watching, guys.